I saw this cool YouTube video, and it affects me. Well, not. I'm on parts that can't be changed, but there's been a lot of talk in like the tech industry of how much VRAM is enough VRAM and how much VRAM isn't enough VRAM. Video RAM, video memory for your graphics card, right? So if you're on a computer, not on a console, we think to ourselves, how much video memory does my graphics card need to perform at the resolutions that we want? Most people, I believe, are still gaming at 1080p and 1440p. 4K is still not the norm, showing from the last Steam hardware surveys. And 8 gigabytes of VRAM is, I believe, now the norm on the Steam hardware survey, at least with the last one. So anything below that considered below average, including 6 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, this only happens in older cards and low-end cards. And I say that because most graphics cards now have 8 gigabytes of VRAM. 2 generations back, RTX 2060, not 2060 Super, unlike what the video says, 2060 only had 6 gigs of VRAM, while the 2060 Super got an additional 2, going up to 8 gigs of VRAM. I can explain how that works. The 2060 Super is actually a cut down die of the 2070, which already had the memory bus ready for 8 gigs of VRAM. So that's why they could just call it a 2060 Super, even though it's closer to a 2070 die, and give it 2 more gigs of VRAM, because it was either 16, 8, 4. Those are the only ways that you can really make that memory bus work for VRAM. The only modern graphics cards that I can think of with 6 gigabytes of VRAM are the RTX 3050 6 gigabyte, which is a cut down version of the RTX 3050, or the RTX 4050, the laptop GPU, the one I currently use. So let's see how people are feeling about the difference between 8 and 6 gigs of VRAM. This is only a 7-minute video, so it shouldn't take too long. That's a good price.
Hey guys, welcome back. As you can see by the title of the video, I picked up the Zotac RTX 2060 Super for the equivalent of $125 US. In reality, it actually cost me about $175, but that's because I'm in Canada, so
get fucked,
for purposes
Canada.
of this video, we'll use
That
the US
sucks.
dollar conversion. The 2060 Super is actually
Canadians
quite
spending
different
more
to
money.
the base 2060 in the fact that it has an extra 2 gigs of video memory. But does that really make a difference in 2024, and should you go out and buy one of these? Let's find out. Before we hop any further into the video, let's take a look at how the 2060 Super differs from the base 2060. First off, it has an increase of CUDA cores from 1920 to 2176. It also has more RT cores, going from 30 to 34. The most important factor, in my opinion, is the increase in video memory, which is from 6 gigs to 8 gigs on a wider 256-bit memory bus. The TDP of the RTX 2060 Super is slightly increased over the base 2060 by about 15 watts, from
It's not that bad.
160 to
15 watts
175.
for all that extra
This
juice.
in reality doesn't really make a huge difference, and in my opinion is still a great card for a small form factor build. The exact model that I have is a Zotac Mini RTX 2060 Super, and I was able to snag this one off Marketplace for 175 Canadian dollars. Thankfully this guy was legit. I mean, I met him at a mall and I didn't get shanked, so I think it all went pretty well. But with that being said, let's get into the benchmarks.
He bought a graphics card off Facebook Marketplace. Wow.
Obviously, the first game we're going to start with here is CS2. CS2 is a lot more demanding than CSGO and is much more relevant in benchmarking these days. With that being said, the 2060 Super pulls an average FPS of 181 with 1% lows of 108. Overall, I would say it was a very smooth experience. There were no stutters, frame pacing issues, or any
Wonder if
weird
he's
things
going to show
happening.
comparisons to the
This
2060.
card is totally suited to a game like this and could be a really good addition to a budget build, or if you already have one and this is what you play, you really don't need to upgrade. Next up in our tests, we have Gray Zone Warfare. I know what you're going to say about this one. Well, my 4070 can't run it. Yeah, that's partially true. For the 2060 Super, I had to pull out all the stops, all the tricks. I used DLSS performance.
Oh,
And I still couldn't really get it to run terribly well. We maintained an average of 48 FPS with a 1% low of
sucks.
21. I would technically call this playable, but it was a little chunky and it kind of looked like you took Vaseline and smeared it on a camera lens, so it wasn't
people
really
say
that
that?
good looking either. If you really wanted to play Gray Zone, you totally could,
Play
it's
some
not a
games with
perfect
DLSS
experience,
performance, and they look
and
fine to
I
me.
don't think this GPU does a fantastic job with this game. Next up is Escape from Tarkov. Now, this was definitely a redeeming run for the 2060 Super, as it was able to achieve an average FPS of 85,
Game
with
also
1%
looks like
lows
butt,
of
though.
55. This experience was miles better than Gray Zone, or shall I say kilometers, but I digress. Anyways, this was run on high settings as compared to low for Gray Zone, and even then, this just performs so much better. I didn't notice any frame dips, any stuttering, anything weird going on. I still felt like I had a competitive edge. I didn't feel like I was being held back by my hardware, and I can definitely recommend the 2060 Super over the base 2060 due to its extra video memory, and that just really goes a long way with this game.
Game looks like butt, dude.
The next game we're going to be testing is Insurgency Sandstorm. This has been one of my favorite games lately. I kind of just hop into a match of domination and kill terrorists.
This guy really loves
it's my
first-person
favorite pastime.
shooters.
What can I say? Anyways, our average FPS was 122 with 1% lows of 71. Overall, this was an excellent experience. I have no complaints. There were no stutters, frame dips, frame pacing was very good. I didn't notice any weird artifacting or anything like that. Overall, for games like this, the 2060 Super is an absolute perfect pairing for 1080p. I was actually running this on the very high preset. You can run it on high and get almost the same graphical fidelity and a lot more frame rate. So overall, I would say this was an excellent experience. Next up, we've got Fortnite. Now,
Oh, I saw that
I don't
stutter.
really play a whole lot of this game anymore. I used to really like it, but then they started updating things, and it's literally just like a toys kid basket. There's literally everything in it and no theme. Anyways, the average FPS was
True, I didn't think
107
about it like
with
that.
1% lows of
Holy
63.
shit, dude!
As you can see in the video,
it's
just
stuttering
there,
so bad for him.
there's quite a bit of stuttering, and it's really annoying. I tried it in DX12, DX11 performance mode, and I ran into the same problem, so I just thought that this game was shit. Anyways, with that being said, the experience overall was pretty good besides the stutters.
Stutters, yeah.
I just think that Fortnite needs to iron out their game engine a little bit because it seems to be pretty
Hey, how you doing?
inconsistent across a wide range of hardware.
I'm sorry, did he start a big shield and then accidentally cancel
Our
it?
final
That's
game
funny.
before heading into the synthetic benchmarks is going to be War Thunder. Now, this is my absolute favorite game. I have like 2,000 hours on it, and as much as I don't want to admit,
I wonder if I have any games that I have that many hours on.
it's a lot of time. Anyways,
2,000
the average FPS
hours?
for War Thunder was 182.
I doubt it. I don't think I have anything with that many hours yet.
121. Overall, this was a really strong showing and is a
Good morning.
testament
How you
to a
doing?
well-optimized game. This game runs on pretty much anything. I remember playing it on my first laptop with UHD 620 graphics, and I was still able to get it to run decently at 1080p. This game isn't terribly GPU demanding. It's more of a CPU demanding game, but if you crank some of the settings like I did for this benchmark, it will absolutely fry any GPU you threw at it. For our first synthetic benchmark, we have 3D Mark's Time Spy. The RTX 2060 Super achieved a score of 8,527 points.
That's really funny that he's talking about 6 gigs of VRAM not being enough, not showing the card that it came from, that it derived from, the 2060. He only shows the 1660 Super. How am I? I'm doing good. We're looking at a YouTube video about 6 gigs of VRAM not being enough. He also never showed VRAM benchmark. He showed that the card is actually using more than 8 gigs, like more than 6 gigs of VRAM. Right? Because if the card's not using more than 6 gigs of VRAM, then the RAM upgrade isn't necessary. Right? So the 1060, full generation older, and the weaker version, right? This is a 2060 Super, not a 2060, so not even directly comparable. 1660 Super and 2060 Super probably more comparable, and their benchmark numbers aren't too far apart. But look how the new generation.
This is a
You out for the Rumble Club session yesterday? My friend and I really appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun. It was super fun. Glad we had a full 4-stack. Look at the difference between an RTX 4060 laptop and a desktop 2060. Like, whoa, we're getting pretty up there. I want to go back and look at the VRAM numbers after this.
Substantial improvement over previous
6 gigs of VRAM wasn't enough anymore. That is such a strange title to not show the 2060 original.
Despite this good score, the 2060 Super is an older card, and it does fall behind more modern cards such as my 4060 laptop and my current desktop card, which is the 6700 XT. Our last synthetic benchmark is going to be Cinebench R24, and this is because they just released a GPU benchmark, so I thought I'd give it a shot.
That's cool.
Anyways,
I never
the
used
RTX
Cinebench, I wouldn't know.
2060 Super gets a score of 5,763, and you'll notice I don't really have a whole lot to compare it to, and that's because it wouldn't run on anything else. The GTX cards that I tried, it just said benchmark failed. My 4060 laptop crashed during the benchmark and I couldn't get it to have a solid run.
That's not good.
And my 6700 XT just straight up refused to start the test, so unfortunately this is all that we have for today. As always, thank you very much for watching the video. Soon I'll be releasing...
So the name of the video feels very clickbait. Unless you actually go into the benchmarks yourself and check to see if the VRAM's not enough, I don't see any world where 8 gigs of VRAM is enough. So look, we can look up here.
It's much more relevant.
If you guys see next to the title, above the title, up there in that top corner, I'm gonna have to bring this down, aren't I? Let me do this. Okay, so you see this megabyte right here? See this? I can explain everything up in this top corner. I might even, maybe I zoom in, right? Maybe I make it really. How do you make things really big? I'm trying to stretch this out. That, this, and I'll refit my play capture the screen after. Don't worry, we need to be able to see this. Very important for all of these videos. Okay, so now it's significantly bigger. You guys can see those numbers up there. All right, so those numbers up there still kind of unfortunately in the way. I'm gonna have to bring them down. Oh well, it looks real ghetto, but that's okay. All right, so if you look at these numbers up here, what we're seeing is this: the GPU temperature, GPU percentage usage, VRAM usage, right? This is the VRAM usage of the card. This is the megahertz that the card is running at, and this is the power load. This is the wattage it's used. As you see here in CSGO, we're not above 6 gigs of VRAM. Let's move over to the next game. If you look over here, Gray Zone Warfare, we're clearly 7,611 megabytes of RAM. That's pretty good. That is 7.6 gigs. That's very close. That's teetering on the edge of actually spilling over into system RAM for an 8 gigabyte graphics card as well. So this isn't working well for this game. Move over. But as you said, this game didn't run very well anyway, right? Like 52 FPS, an average of 47. That's pretty low. Let's go over to the next game. Escape from Tarkov. Escape from Tarkov, also massive worlds. Let me be honest. Escape from Tarkov, he has a 1080p high, not like medium or low. 1080p high. Massive worlds, right? Not very small. But here you can see that it's using almost the full, once again, 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which means it might be spilling over into system RAM. The reason why you don't want it to spill over into system RAM is because system RAM is generally slower than VRAM, and it has to process that information. And if it does, the game will run slower, and maybe you'll get more like lower 1% lows, which will also hinder your average FPS. That's why people fight so hard for bigger VRAM buffers, is because the more VRAM you have, the less likely you are to ever spill over into system RAM at whatever your preferred screen resolution or video settings are. So 2 games out of the 3 so far. Let's move over. Let's check on, what was this called? Oh, another. Oh, 6 gigs of RAM doesn't look like it's enough. Look at that. Another game. We're at 7.9 gigs. Once again, about to spill over. Very, very close. And I can't remember what he said this game was called. And I think the last game he shows is Fortnite. Fortnite, I think it doesn't run over the system RAM. Yeah, I think he's playing here at DirectX 11. This doesn't look like performance mode, but DirectX 11 is using about 5 gigs of RAM. Not bad, right? So it's all game dependent. I want people to know and understand it. It's fully, fit this screen. It's fully game dependent and also settings dependent, right? You could run every single one of those games probably below 6 gigs of VRAM. It's possible. The textures won't look as good, and maybe the overall immersion experience would be worse in some of those larger games like Escape from Tarkov, because you're breaking immersion by looking at the trees and they're loading in from a distance and they're still blocky and gross, kind of like a Nintendo Switch loads in trees for Fortnite. Yeah, I've seen it because I play a lot of Nintendo Switch Fortnite. It's actually really not that bad. Just don't play it for too long, your eyes will hurt, because 30 FPS lock is crazy. A game like Fortnite, right? The sides of the mountains, the sides of hills and stuff look very blocky instead of having like ridges and textures. You can see how straight and like geometric this line is, when this is probably supposed to have ridges to it. And the reason why it doesn't is because lower VRAM amounts, lower graphics settings. I play on 60 FPS because my PC is a potato. Yeah, I had my first PC was pretty strong for its time, but as it got passed up by newer games, newer drivers, it got worse overall. But I was on a 4 GB graphics card, not even 5 years ago. I was on a 4 GB graphics card, the GTX 970, and then after that, I was on a 1650 Super, also 4 GB of VRAM. I didn't start to witness 8 GB of VRAM textures and 6 GB of VRAM textures until recently with my last computer before I moved over to my laptop, which was the 2070. 2070 has 8 gigs of VRAM. And I'm going to be quite honest, I don't even feel the difference in experience between my 2070 and my I'll just show you guys and my RTX 4050 laptop. So let me go to RTX 4050 Tech Power Up. Oops. Tech Power Up is like my favorite website. I'm here all the fucking time. Yeah, if we look at the difference between an RTX 4050 and a 2070, it's like not that different. And guess what? I only have 6 gigs of VRAM. That's all I got. But the relative performance really isn't that different. It says that the 2070 has that the RTX 4050 has an edge over the 2070. I don't feel it. I'm gonna be quite honest. I think that my desktop, my 2070 desktop, was a little stronger. I think this might be inaccurate. As someone who's actually used both a desktop 2070 and a laptop 4050, I feel like it might just be the amount of power that a 2070 has in it total, right? That the VRAM is on board and there's a full 8 gigs of it. Maybe for some specific games, it ran faster because of the fact that it had a full 8 gigabytes of VRAM instead of 6. But it's not a massive difference. I can't really feel the difference between my desktop and my laptop most of the time. Like, I'm like, oh, this is the same. Like, I can run this game at medium just fine at, 70 or 80 FPS the same way I would run it on my desktop. Cool. And now I have newer things like frame generation, which I will let you guys know now, frame generation uses more VRAM. So if you have low amounts of VRAM like this, 6 gigabytes on an RTX 2050, I'm sorry, on an RTX 2060, using frame generation from AMD or NVIDIA, you will spill over your VRAM amount, even on top of using DLSS. Now, another whole can of worms, DLSS, FSR, those render the game at a lower native resolution and then upscale the game to your monitor's resolution, right? So if I'm playing at 1080p with balanced DLSS, I'm running the game at 720p native, which means that the textures are running at 720p. They're 720p textures, so they are using less VRAM, which will keep you inside of the VRAM buffer, and then they're upscaled. Right? It all depends how you decide to play your games and how you want to play your games, like how you want them to look and run. If you want your games to run really fast, you're going to lower everything to low anyway. There's no way you're going to be using up 6 gigs of VRAM in most games. If you want your games to be fidelity, high quality, you want that full pixel perfect experience, you're going to be running at your native 1080p, your native 1440p. You won't be using DLSS. You may go over your VRAM amount. I don't play a lot of AAA games. The only AAA game I own, I guess, or the only, I don't know if it's considered a AAA game, the only single player game on UE5 with really big textures is Remnant 2. I own Remnant 2. I played at 1080p, medium settings with DLSS balanced and frame gen or quality. I think I use DLSS balanced and frame generation, and it feels great. I'm on a 6 gigabyte VRAM graphics card. Take that as you will. You decide how you think each game will run for you and decide what the products you need. I'm going to be honest. I think everyone should be safe and just go for an 8 gigabyte VRAM graphics card. 8 gigabytes should be probably the minimum. I really hope that NVIDIA and AMD don't release any more graphics cards that use 4 or 8 gigabytes of VRAM, especially past 2024. We're too far past that. But if you are a gamer using cheaper hardware or used hardware, I think 6 gigabytes is enough. If you're on a 1660 Super, a 1660 Ti, a 2060, an RTX 3050 gigabyte, I think you're going to be okay. Anyways, how do you guys feel about the VRAM amounts in 2024 for computer graphics cards? You guys really feel as if 6 gigabytes isn't the minimum and it's truly 8? Do you think you can squeeze in most AAA experiences on a 6 gigabyte graphics card? Tell me down below in the comments section. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. This has been Beanie Thuggish talking about 6 gigabytes of VRAM not being enough anymore. signing out and saying peace.